You're not tired. Tired goes away after a good night of sleep. What you're feeling right now is something different, and if you've been calling it tiredness, exhaustion, or just a rough patch, you've been misdiagnosing a condition that gets worse every time you ignore it. Burnout is not a mood. It's not weakness. It's not something that fixes itself with a weekend off or a vacation. It is a clinically recognized syndrome, classified by the World Health Organization, with measurable neurological, hormonal, and physiological consequences that compound silently over months and years. And the most dangerous thing about it is that the people most likely to experience it are the ones least likely to admit it: high achievers, dedicated professionals, people who care deeply about what they do. If that sounds like you, keep watching, because this video might be the most important one you see this year. The first thing you need to understand is what burnout actually is at the biological level, because most people think of it as an emotional or motivational problem, and that misunderstanding is exactly why most recovery attempts fail. Burnout is a state of chronic stress that has overwhelmed the body's ability to regulate itself. At its core, it involves the dysregulation of the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, which governs your body's stress response. Under normal conditions, cortisol rises when you face a challenge and drops when the challenge passes. In burnout, that rhythm breaks down. Cortisol levels become chronically dysregulated, sometimes abnormally high, sometimes abnormally low, and the system loses its ability to respond proportionally to demand. The result is that your body is simultaneously exhausted and unable to rest. You feel wired and depleted at the same time. That is not tiredness. That is a broken stress regulation system. What does this look like from the inside? You probably already know. You wake up after 8 hours of sleep and feel like you didn't sleep at all. You sit down to do work you used to love and feel nothing, no interest, no energy, no sense that it matters. Small things that never bothered you before now feel overwhelming. You find yourself going through the motions, performing a version of your life without actually being present in it. Your patience is gone. Your creativity is gone. Your sense of humor is gone. And underneath all of it is a quiet, persistent fear that you will never feel like yourself again. That fear is not irrational. It is your nervous system accurately reporting the state of a system under severe, prolonged stress. But here is what that fear gets wrong: burnout is reversible. It requires the right understanding and the right approach, but it is reversible. Now let's talk about why the most dedicated people are the most vulnerable, because this is the part that nobody warns you about. Burnout doesn't happen to people who don't care. It happens to people who care too much, for too long, without adequate recovery. Researchers Christina Mosluck and Michael Leiter, who have spent decades studying burnout, identified a consistent profile. The people most at risk are those with high internal standards, strong identification with their work, and a tendency to push through discomfort rather than acknowledge it. In other words, the traits that make someone exceptional at what they do are the same traits that make them exceptional at ignoring the warning signs until the system collapses. Hustle culture made this worse by reframing exhaustion as a badge of honor. An entire generation was taught that rest is laziness, that pushing past your limits is discipline, and that the discomfort of burnout is just the price of ambition. That narrative is not just wrong, it is physiologically dangerous. Here is what actually happens in your brain during burnout, and why rest alone will never be enough to fix it. Chronic stress physically alters brain structure. Studies using MR imaging have shown that prolonged exposure to elevated cortisol reduces gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and cognitive flexibility. It also enlarges the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, making you more reactive, more anxious, and less able to think clearly under pressure. Meanwhile, the hippocampus, critical for memory and learning, shrinks under chronic cortisol exposure. This means that burnout doesn't just affect how you feel. It affects how you think, how you remember, how you make decisions, and how you perceive threats. Taking 2 weeks off does not reverse structural brain changes that developed over months or years. This is why people return from vacation still feeling empty. The problem was never the absence of vacation. The problem is a nervous system that has been operating in emergency mode for so long it has forgotten how to do anything else. So what does real recovery actually look like? The first and most critical shift is moving from passive rest to active nervous system regulation. Passive rest, lying on the couch, watching television, sleeping, provides some relief but does not directly address the dysregulated HPA axis. Active regulation means deliberately engaging the parasympathetic nervous system through practices that have measurable physiological effects. Slow diaphragmatic breathing, particularly techniques that extend the exhale, directly reduce cortisol and activate the vagus nerve. Cold exposure, moderate intensity exercise, and time in natural environments have all been shown in peer-reviewed research to restore HPA axis function more effectively than passive rest alone. This is not wellness advice. This is physiology. The second layer of real recovery is addressing what researchers call the 6 domains of burnout, the specific mismatches between a person and their environment that drive the condition. These are workload, control, reward, community, fairness, and values. Mosluck's research shows consistently that burnout is not simply about working too many hours. It is about working in conditions where effort is not proportional to reward, where autonomy is absent, where relationships are fractured, or where daily tasks conflict with core values. Genuine recovery requires honestly identifying which of these domains is most misaligned, and making structural changes, not just behavioral ones. You cannot rest your way out of a values conflict. You cannot sleep your way out of an environment that is fundamentally incompatible with your well-being. The third element is rebuilding what burnout erodes most deeply, a sense of meaning and identity beyond performance. One of the most consistent findings in burnout research is that the condition strips away the emotional connection to work that motivated the person in the first place. Recovering that connection, or discovering a new one, requires deliberate engagement with activities that produce intrinsic reward without performance pressure. Creative pursuits, physical movement, deep social connection, time in nature, these are not luxuries in the recovery process. They are the neurological inputs through which the brain rebuilds its capacity for positive emotional experience. Without them, recovery stalls at functional but never reaches flourishing. You made it to the end of this video, and if any of what you just heard felt uncomfortably familiar, that recognition is the beginning of your recovery. Not the admission of failure. The beginning of the path back. Burnout is not a permanent condition. But it does not resolve on its own, and it does not respond to the same strategies that caused it. Start today by asking yourself one honest question: which of the 6 domains, workload, control, reward, community, fairness, or values, is most out of alignment in your life right now? Write it down. That single act of clarity is more powerful than any productivity system you will ever find. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that what they're feeling has a name, has a cause, and has a way through. Subscribe if you want to keep going, because the next video goes deep into the recovery protocol, step by step. See you there.